Hey everyone, it's Myriam, and for this week's video I decided to upload the painting time-lapse of my painting in Memoriam that I did back in June. And for the process of editing this video, I actually realised I think I might want to repaint this one because I've actually evolved and improved quite a lot since then. There's a lot of things that I would like to change if I was to repaint this piece, but I still like it. I don't stay a fan of my pieces for very long, so now there's a lot of things that I would change if I redid it now, but I still really like it. And before anyone asks, there isn't any specific meaning behind this piece. There is generally no meaning intention behind the pieces I paint. They just come to me and then I paint them basically. But if you guys have any interpretation of it, I would obviously be very happy to hear them. I always find it very interesting to hear what people see in my paintings. This piece will be in my shop. It will be a limited edition print of probably 50 or 80 pieces, and it will be printed on a different paper than I usually use. I usually use Fujifilm glossy or matte, I don't quite remember, but I would like to use a fine art rag type paper for this piece, and they will all come with a certificate of authenticity if you guys are interested, so make sure to check that out at the end of my video. Anyway, for this video I wanted to cover the subject of art block because it's been asked of me a few times, and it's also, I think, a recurring theme in a lot of artists' life, and it's just an interesting subject to cover, and I think every artist got a different take on it, so I just thought I'd give you mine. I've heard there was controversy about art block. I've personally never encountered controversy around it until I came on YouTube. Every artist I've ever met kind of agreed that it was a thing. How exactly it manifests itself in people and how people go about healing it is different for everyone, I think. But I don't know, everyone's always agreed that around me that at least they existed. But anyway, it's one of those things, I suppose. Everything's a bit of a controversy like this when it's so subjective, I suppose. But anyway, I'm just gonna jump into the subject. So first I just wanted to talk a little bit about what the definition of art block is, and when I look around on the internet I either get no answers, just solutions, or a really broad definition that I'm not sure fits everyone, and that definition tends to be along the lines of lack of creativity, imagination and or motivation. Now that definition bothers me because creativity and motivation in my book are very different things and therefore require a different process to fix. And that's obviously not to say that they are not linked and intertwined, but as much as they very often come together, whether it be that, motivation is lacking and therefore our brain can't be bothered to come up with ideas, or that our imagination is running dry, leading to a dip in drive and energy, they can also come separately. For example, personally, I experience lack of imagination and a dip in creativity more often than I do a lack of motivation, and there are reasons to that in my personal context, which leads me to my next point, which is that the nature, reasons and solutions to your art block will often depend a lot on who you are, what context you are in, and what art is to you. To summarise, I'd say that although the term art block is broad and it covers a bunch of various behaviours, it seems to generally relate to an atypical dip in creative productivity. Its solution, I think, needs to be tailored to the individual by taking into account the causes, the context, and also the relationship that an individual artist might have with their art. Next, I wanted to cover what causes art block. Before we can determine a solution to our art block, we need to figure out what is causing it to be able to tailor a solution. So it can be something as simple as plain physical exhaustion or emotional overload from an intense day or a week of work, or it can be something a bit more insidious like a lack of self-confidence or a feeling of being overwhelmed. So first I'm going to talk about lack of creativity and imagination gone stale. And in that case, several things can trigger that, I think, and they are generally on a spectrum, like most things are. So it can either be like the extreme end of the spectrum where there's too much stimulation in a situation in which your brain has just been required to work too fast and or for too long, and it can lead to it having a tantrum and just decided to shut down and go on holiday for a bit without asking for your permission. And that means that it just won't come up with new ideas as it's too drained and exhausted. And on the other hand, the other end of the spectrum would be that our imagination needs to be fed to keep creating. you need to have a constant, like a stream of new ideas and of things to fuel that imagination. So if you have been through a patch of time where nothing exciting or interesting was being presented to your brain, it will become difficult for you to generate ideas, and just synergy and kind of stimulation are really necessary to imagination. But lastly, I also wanted to say that maybe you're just being too hard on yourself. I know I do that a lot. Maybe you're rejecting all the ideas your brain is having because you don't feel like they are good enough, and I'm using air quotes here, or original enough, again with air quotes. And you feel like you are failing and coming up with adequate ideas to fit your own standards. But anyway, these are the reasons I can think of behind a lack of creativity. Now, when it comes to lack of motivation, I think it can be a little bit more pernicious. It can obviously come from being overly stressed and overworked or under too much pressure, but if it's none of those things, then it might be because you are lacking self-confidence. In my case, self-doubt is my rake. I every so often walk on it, and it smashes me in the face, and it knocks all the confidence I had managed to build up out of me. And it makes me feel like I don't know anything whatsoever. It freezes my hand and my imagination, and it makes me feel stiff and unskilled. I lose my instincts and motivation, and I feel like I will never reach my goals, and I want to give up, curl into bed, and never draw again. And even if my rational brain knows that I do have some knowledge and I am not completely useless, these episodes mean that I go into emotional overload and I can't process rational thought. So you might be comparing yourself to others and think that you will never be that good, or you might be contemplating the path ahead and feel like it's just too long, too big, or too difficult, too overwhelming, there's too much risk of failure. Trust me, I know the feeling really, really well. But it's all okay. And that would really be my first piece of advice to anyone, really, to heal our block. Just don't beat yourself up. Truly. I really mean it. I know it's a cliche sentence, but I really mean it. Because feeling guilty, feeling like this is you being lazy and useless, like somehow it's your fault, and feeling like it won't end, that will all make it worse. We all go through it. 99% of artists go through this at some point or another. It might vary in how it manifests itself, but we all experience dips. It's nothing to beat yourself up about. Feeling guilty will not only contribute to your feeling of being useless, if that's what one of your symptoms is. So just be kind to yourself first and foremost. Take it as a sign that you might need some kind of a break. That might mean a break from art altogether, either for an hour or a few days. And that applies to it no matter what the cause of your art block is. Take the time to listen to yourself. If need be, just sit there and embrace how frustrated, annoyed, tired, or maybe sad you feel. Don't reject the feelings and just let them wash over you and manifest themselves. Accept that this is how you are feeling now and don't fight it. But also, don't, wallow in it and feel sorry for yourself constantly or for too long. Don't drown or exacerbate the feelings either. If need be, you can write down all the things your brain is telling you, no matter how negative. Do a long, angry list of all the things that annoy you, that you feel are in your way, the way you feel, and all the irrational thoughts that are blocking your path. And then do the opposite. Do a kind list of all the things you achieved, the reasons you're proud, the things that make you feel better. Nothing too small. Just get it all out of your system. So that's a general way of helping. But then the ways to get past that block depend on how you are feeling and what is causing it. So for example, if you're tired and overworked and stressed because of an exterior source, and if art is an added source of pressure and stress and not what you're going to go to for relief at that moment, then just take a real break from it, and if you can, from the other things that are stressing you out too. There are many ways to do that, but I find that the most beneficial ones that help me personally get back to enjoying art are going for a walk, in nature preferably. That helps me recenter myself and always allows me to put things back into perspective. I also like to cook myself a really nice meal that I can focus on completely and then enjoy while watching a film. Just feel content in that simplicity. Or I read a book I love. Or I exercise and then I take a bath or like a really warm shower. Just very simple, uncomplicated things that require no real mental effort. Complete breaks from art and the rest of my life and obligations. I focus on how I feel and purposefully choose things that make me unequivocally happy in that moment. And this also applies if you had an art burnout and a creative overload and feel too much pressure to make art. Take a break before you burn out completely. And just as a side note that I'll come back to later, I just want to point out that all those things that I just listed are things that take no more than a few hours to maybe 1 or 2 days. They're not extended time things, and I'll come back to that point later on to make a different point. So just keep that in mind. Now, if you're experiencing creativity and imagination problems, then give your brain a break from trying to think of new ideas. Turn it off and do more technical exercises like drawing from reference. One of my favourite things to do for that is do a lot of extremely quick life drawing poses. And I'll put a few sources to that kind of thing in the description below if you guys want to check out things like that. And I do like 15 to 30 seconds max, maybe. And like doing very quick sketches from reference like that, preferably in a sketchbook that I don't really care about. I actually have literally a super cheap sketchbook that I use for all my studies, because that way I'm not worried about messing up or anything, and it's actually really liberating. But it will force your brain not to think and instead to go straight to the essentials. So it's a very great way of learning. It's also a really great way of disconnecting your brain from thinking too much about what you're drawing. So it also forces you not to care too much about the outcome and the result, because in such a short time frame, it's rarely used in a way to get good work out of it. It's just practicing instincts and gestures. On the other hand, if the idea of having a time frame and challenge it entails daunts you and makes you stiffer, draw something you love drawing, no matter how simple or how many times you've done it before. Draw something you find fun, that makes you smile or laugh. You can even trace something to relax your brain, as long as you're crystal clear about that fact if you decide to share it anywhere, of course. If you're going to trace another person's work, ask them if you can first and things like that. But if you're going to keep it to yourself, you can, copy and trace things just to get your hand working without your brain having to be involved. And this is all to get away from forcing your mind to give you ideas. If you then want to start fueling your imagination again, browse Pinterest or Instagram or Tumblr or ArtStation. Create 1 million folders of all the things that you find cool or interesting. Make folders of your favourite artists' work, or your favourite animals or creatures or photographs that inspire you. I used to have a folder called Inspiration Bases, in which I would save loads of images that sparked ideas in me, and I occasionally would flip through it and sometimes start copying a picture, and then every time I did that, it would turn into something completely different and give me totally new ideas. It was great. And even if you don't draw for a bit, keep looking at other people's work. Keep fueling your brain with new things. Watch YouTube videos. Look for funny art memes. Create Pinterest folders. Just keep your creative brain stimulated. If you're experiencing art block but don't want to stop drawing, copying references and studying areas you want to improve in is always a good thing to do. Or you can also start working on bigger projects you've always wanted to start, or just create yourself one on the spot. A big project always requires a lot of work, and getting started on something complex and new can be exciting and energizing. You can create yourself a list of all the things you want to include in that project and then slowly tick them off, and it'll make you feel like you've evolved and got things done. And simply the process of researching the matter can be turned into fuel. On the other hand, if the idea of such a big thing scares you, and like an infinite amount of things to do and a really long list petrifies you, do small things, that make you happy, drawings that make you feel good about yourself. Art is nothing without the pleasure of doing it. So if that's what's disappeared in you, then reacquaint yourself with that feeling by doing the things that made you happy in the first place. One of the key things I experience with art block is a massive drop in my self-confidence, because if I'm not drawing, I feel like I'm disappointing myself by being unproductive and not working harder to improve. So my mind says that this is my passion, so why am I not always super happy to work? Am I a fraud? And I just keep beating myself up like that. So I find that I need to make myself proud of myself again, in order to heal my spirit and my mind and find a good place in my head to start working again. And that always starts with creating the feeling of having achieved something. And in the context of art block, that means, drawing. So I will always be proud of myself for working past the obstacles rather than giving in to them. Because working past feeling down and unmotivated and tired is really hard. It's really difficult sometimes. But that's what makes it worth it. Because at the end of the day, I will be in a much better place if I've managed to fit in even just half an hour of drawing than if I did nothing at all. And let me tell you, after years of working through my periods of art block, taking a few breaks, but like I said, never longer than a day or two, drawing from reference, doing some research, trying to learn and push through it, I've now come to a point where art block doesn't actually influence me anymore. It affects me, but it doesn't stop me. I've trained myself to look past it. And that's because of determination and not inspiration and not motivation, just determination. I have goals I want to achieve and I cannot let myself be delayed by the whims of my inspiration and motivation, because every time I do, I am worse off. And this leads me to my last piece of advice. Take care of yourself, be gentle and kind to yourself, but always do it by doing what is best for you, not what is most comfortable. Giving in is comfortable, keeping going is what's best for you. So take breaks when you need to and listen to how you feel, but don't stop and wait for your brain to tell you it's working again. Don't wait for inspiration to come back or motivation to knock on your door. If that's all you needed to do all the time, then art would be easy. But part of what makes art so hard is that it does not come easy. You have to work at it, and to succeed in it, it takes bucket loads of determination and working through the pain. So never use art block as an excuse to not draw, or you will only make things worse. Keep learning, keep doing, and it will pay off. You will become better and better at self-policing and self-control and determination, and you will make yourself proud. Being an artist is a lot about self-discipline, and that starts with conquering your own mind. So anyway, I'm sorry, I was ranting. Didn't realise where the video was at. But this video has gone on long for long. Oh dear God. This video has gone on for long enough now. So I'm going to let you go. I hope you guys didn't mind my ranting and my kind of passionate ramblings at the end. This is my thought on art block. I'd love to hear what you guys feel, how you experience it, what causes it in you, and what you find works for you to get away from it. And yeah, thank you again so much for watching. I hope you guys are all well. I just realised the other day that in August it was the 1 year anniversary of my channel, which is overwhelming. So thank you everyone who's been with me on this journey. I love you all. Take really good care of yourself and I'll see you soon. Bye everyone.